What do the born again virgins do when it's time to actually think about engaging in sexuality again?
Get comfortable with themselves, because sex is not just, sex is what we consider a penis and a vagina until a man finishes.
The first time you get intimate with somebody, whoa.
Only 4% of women are having an orgasm on their first experience with a man.
What percentage of women are faking it?
Oh my God, everyone is faking it. Most of the first time sex with someone, it's not gonna blow your mind. You're kind of figuring it out. It's kind of awkward. You're probably not having an orgasm. A lot of people are doing that, whether it be called like considering edging, where they're kind of, they will let themselves have an orgasm at the end of the experience, but they'll kind of bring themselves to the edge of the orgasm, stop, and then continue the process a couple of times until it's a much more intense experience.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you, like I always do, to transform me to we through the process of running that dating thing in your life a little better than you used to. Now, today's a fun one. We're talking about sex today, folks. I have my girl, Elizabeth Ashford, on with me, and it's going to be so much fun to pick her brain. Her company is called Beyond The Beez, and she's the founder and creative director. So here's the purpose of it: to normalize the conversation around sexual health and self-discovery and curate a welcoming community where everyone feels like they belong. You're speaking my language. Welcome to the program, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive in.
Well, it's really cute because I started studying human sexuality in college, and that's right about the time that you got really interested in it as well.
My parents and I always joked that like we always should have known that I would go this route. I've always loved talking about sex. I've always loved learning about it since I was like young. So when I finally got to like really study human sexuality, I was a psych major initially, and the two to me were just so fascinating how they played on each other. As obviously the biggest sex organ is the brain, so it just all kind of meshes together.
My major at the University of Vermont was psychology, and I studied every single bit of human sexuality that I could until my counselor sat me down and said, Julie, you cannot get any more college credit at the University of Vermont for the study of sex. I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to fulfill your credits another way.
That's so funny. You're like, "Give me more."
And I came from this family in the Midwest where my mother couldn't even say the word sex. She had to spell it. All boys want is sex. And she was totally inhibited. And I can talk about her now because she's on the other side. And if you're listening, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm still talking about sex. Okay. And my father would say things like, and he would say things like to me and my sister, I always really liked sex, but your mother, she never really could get into it. And
Oh
so
my
maybe that's why I decided to study it. So
God.
why were you obsessed with sex?
I think I just thought it was such an interesting conversation. And I think when I was younger, it was like the forbidden topic, which I'm very much the type that, like, if I can't do something or if I'm not allowed to do something or talk about it, I want to talk about it or do it more. Like, I
Are
think
you
I
the
just
second
found
child in your family?
I'm the second child. So I love boundary pushing. So I think that it was so naughty and crazy. I always thought that it just kind of like drew my eye. And then once I really started diving into it in college, and I think there were two things that was going on for me. I'd always been interested, and then when I went to college, I got to kind of see more of the harsher reality of how much women are experiencing a lot of sexual assaults, or just the ways that we're getting spoken to or touched or treated or whatever it may be. And so I was originally going to go into sexual prevention work and really help with people who would either avoid bad experiences or help people come out on the other side of them. And it was honestly too heavy for me. I remember I was about to submit my application to do that work in a college group on campus. And then I never submitted it. I was like, I just think it's going to be way too heavy. So I was like, I'm going to go the sex positive route, which we're all kind of doing the same thing, but it's with that sort of positive lens of education. So that's how I got led to that group.
The term sex positive, define it for us. We hear it, but what does it mean to you?
To me, it's such a funny thing. So sex positivity to me is just it's an idea of kind of exploring a sense of curiosity of whatever that may be. It allows you to take yourself seriously and like that your sexual identity as a part of who you are and explore that rather than try to shove it down or repress it. And I think in general, a lot of people think that sexual positive educators or health educators are these like crazy sex people that have like are always having sex and have the highest sex drives and all this stuff. And the reality is that that's your sex drive is going to go up and down the rest of your life. I'll have problems or things I need to fix or realign or dive into for the rest of my life as well. And it's the openness and the awareness that your sex life is like the rest of your life, which is, ups and downs and journeys and curiosities and exploration. So to me, that's what it means.
All right, it makes sense. A lot of people come to me, the matchmaker, having just recently started thinking about dating again after a breakup, after someone's died, they're widowed or they're divorced. And we affectionately call these people born again virgins.
I love
In many cases, it's been years, it's been decades since they have done anything at all south of the border, which is below the belly button. So I'm curious, you're the perfect person to ask if you have someone in your life who has not really been engaging, they've sort of been dormant. What do you recommend? I know that people are listening and their ears are perking up, right? So what do the born again virgins do when it's time to actually think about engaging in sexuality again?
My first thought, and always what I urge people to do, is get comfortable with themselves, because sex is not just, sex is what we consider a penis and a vagina until a man finishes, is what we are often using as a definition. And it's so limiting and uninteresting. And people, I really encourage sexual self pleasure of masturbation. I think if people are kind of trying to lean back into that space and they haven't been, masturbating, that's like the perfect way to start. So it's not just like this big shock with a partner that you haven't experienced and it's all new and all the feelings are new. So that's kind of a stepping stone that I think should always be a part of your experience with yourself. If it's something that you're interested in, self pleasure is a great thing. And then I think there's got to be like a really great sense of open communication. What people call the meta emotion or the meta communication, where you'll go into the conversation, say something like, I'm almost embarrassed to have to share that I haven't been intimate in for this long, but I'm feeling these ways and I'm nervous about this and I just wanted to talk to you about it, and put the feeling of what the feeling above what you're experiencing even is and what you're afraid their response will be, so that they kind of are know how to handle it and know how to respond in a way that feels safe for you, because people aren't mind readers, so you kind of have to help them, especially if it's a new partner.
I like what you said, Elizabeth, about how we should be we should be exploring ourselves privately first. And while we're in the process of dating and learning what intimacy is again at this time in our lives, and separate from the complexity of the relationship. The first time you get intimate with somebody, whoa, I'm always hoping that it won't be in the first few dates, that it'll be after you've had a chance to find out from the other person, what does sex mean to you? Does it mean we're exclusive? Does it mean you're my boyfriend? What does it mean? Because some people, it doesn't mean that at all. They could be having sex with whoever they feel like, and it's not a problem. And other people, they have this understanding, well, if we're going to be doing that, then we are in a relationship. But isn't it bizarre that people sometimes feel more comfortable getting naked and doing the wild thing than having a conversation about it?
Totally. I mean, especially for women, we live in this world where repression and exploration are these like negative words, and having sex is a negative thing because you don't want to be a whore and you want to be a good girl and all these things. So sometimes like pushing the boundaries, and sometimes people will go the route of, instead of feeling shameful, going shameless and just being so quick to jump into it, which if you want to jump into it, you 100% should. I'm the biggest advocate of, if you want to have sex on the first date, you should have sex on the first date. But it's just that we're kind of trying to remove the power behind sex, and we don't want it to be shameless. We don't want it to be shameful. We just want it to be another aspect of an intimate relationship that is both for your partner, but also really for yourself.
So this is fascinating because I've been coaching people for the 34 years that I've been doing this work. And I pretty much always suggest that they stay north of the border till they've had this conversation. And part of the reason is because of oxytocin. I don't have to tell you what oxytocin is. Tell me that's part of the reason why I've encouraged people, not on the first date, not on the second date, you're going to get attached to this person and you're going to get crazy because the great creator wants babies and the great creator wants a lot of sex happening and the bonding thing happens. So talk to me about oxytocin.
Totally. So there is a bit of a misconception with this concept of oxytocin. So basically it's the love hormone. And when you touch someone, but any kind of forms of touch, that oxytocin can get released. So hugging, kissing, intimacy, whatever it may be. But the thing we often refer to as like sort of that bonding chemical is not related to the sex act itself. It's usually related to orgasm. And when it comes to people having experiences, women are only 4% of women are having an orgasm on their first experience with a man. So it's
Wait a
not
minute.
to worry about.
Wait a minute. 4% of women first
4%.
encounter with a man actually have an orgasm.
Yes, it's horrendous. 4% for women and then 55% for men. So it's actually lower for men as well. But it's for me, I just think the concept of attachment is nothing to get worried about until it's more of like an experience that's really pleasurable, because I think it's you can get really attached to sex when it's something that's really amazing, but most of the first time sex with someone, it's not going to blow your mind. You're kind of figuring it out. It's kind of awkward. You're probably not having an orgasm, so it's more of that sense of exploration to me than it is that like deep bonding attachment experience.
I remember listening to an interview with John Gray, Mars and Venus guy. And he was talking about, I don't know the name of it, but there's this whole practice and discipline that some people are doing today where you do everything but have an orgasm. And
Totally.
you hold it, like you don't allow yourself to go into that place. And he was just telling us how amazing that is. Talk to me about that.
Yes, a lot of people are doing that, whether it be called considering edging, where they kind of, they will let themselves have an orgasm at the end of the experience, but they'll kind of bring themselves to the edge of the orgasm, stop, and then continue the process a couple of times until it's a much more intense experience. But some people kind of, maybe see the power of an orgasm rather than the power of, casual sex or sex in general, that has much more of that bonding and unifying experience. So I can understand some people being a bit more afraid of that. To me, that one makes a bit more sense than intercourse, because a lot of intercourse, it's, people often can get bored or get disinterested in it, especially with like new people. It's not quite this unbelievable experience unless we're really tuning into a woman's body and like helping her figure out a way to reach these places of pleasure. But that's what our uphill battle that we're on right now. So one day, hopefully that will be the problem, that we're experiencing too much pleasure, but right now we're not experiencing enough.
Wow. And I would imagine that, like I have heard over and over again that young people in their 20s are experiencing less sex than any generation in the history of humanity. Is this true?
Yes, it's definitely true, because like I said before, the brain is the biggest sex organ and stress is the biggest sex killer. And obviously the new generation, their anxiety levels, it's so much higher than what it used to be for what we consider adults now. A lot of the teens or preteens or whatever it may be, when they're trying to explore, it's a whole different world. It's a much more digital world. So the combination of the two is two of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of less sex.
Wow. So these stupid devices, again, they are problematic. And then you probably know the answer to this question I've been wondering about. Pornography. Is pornography more common among people in their 20s, people in their 30s today than it ever has been?
It is, because it's more accessible than it ever has been, obviously, with our phones and whatnot. I'm definitely not of I think pornography can be a good thing if it's not utilized as education. So there's a lot of people that are working to fight pornography rather than funneling into sexual education. And to me, fighting the internet is like the craziest concept. You'll never win, and we're never going to get rid of our phones and get rid of all this, the ability to be able to see it. So what we want to do instead is really urge people and parents to get their youth and their kids into programs so they can learn about sex. Then when they are watching porn, which is pretty much for a lot of people inevitable, they can decipher what's real, what's not, what's misogynistic, what's racist, all those things, and be able to do that themselves with their educated minds.
So I keep thinking about this thing that you said, that in first encounters, 4% of women have orgasms. What percentage of women are faking it?
Oh my God, everyone is faking it. It is like the one thing that we tell everyone, we're like, don't fake it, because obviously there's so many good reasons behind people wanting to fake it. They want to make their partners feel good. They don't want them to feel like they don't know what they're doing. And the nurturing aspect of it is a beautiful thing, but it's literally giving a roadmap to your partner of exactly what doesn't work and then making it look like it is. So everyone.
So if you fake it, you're giving the message that that was good. Do that again.
That was good. Exactly.
And instead you're thinking that was bad.
That was terrible. So yeah, if you're listening to this, do not fake your orgasms. I left that behind a long time ago, and I'm so happy that I did. I think it's the worst form of sexual communication for you and your partner.
There's something else that occurs to me. I could talk to you about this stuff all day long. We could have a 5-hour podcast. My mother is like rolling in her grave right now. It's amazing to me that not only are people more comfortable getting naked, doing the wild thing than they are talking about it, but also looking each other in the eye. That's vulnerability. That's intimacy. When you're being sexual with someone and you are looking them in the eye. Talk to me about that.
There's a whole push these days in, I don't know if you've heard of tantric sex, probably, but tantric sex is it really kind of is urging people to have this more like spiritual experience rather than just this quick sexual experience, because a lot of the times when we're having intercourse, especially as heterosexual couples, that intercourse is lasting 5 to 7 minutes, which is very, very short in comparison to back to women and their pleasure. You usually need 15 to 20 minutes. So the push for tantric sex is really interesting because it's really encouraging breath work, eye contact, and slowing things down, which can really, heighten all these experiences. And that's something that a lot of people will urge people going into new experiences to not do with a new partner, because that can create really deep connection when you're really focusing on each other and really being in present moment with them. Eye contact, orgasms, all that thing, it's much more likely to happen in something like a tantric experience. So people urge new partners away from that. But that's something that I think, it just kind of helps you dive into the experience further. Again, slows it down, helps people really enter the space of what you're doing. Because when, like we said, stress is the biggest sex killer, and people are often spectatoring and thinking about things that aren't, like folding their laundry and doing the dishes during the experience. So you want to really center yourself into the moment, which is where the eye contact can be hugely beneficial.
So do you recommend that a new couple, go to a tantra workshop or something like that together?
Totally. And there's so many things online too. There's so many videos and YouTubers and whatever it may be as like kind of a starting point to dip your toe in and see if it's for you. But I think it's such a fascinating concept. I think it's so healthy. I remember even when I was in college, there was a seminar going on about tantric sex, and all the girls were like, we're so excited to go learn about this crazy experience. But people love it. So for sure.
Interesting. All right. Fun question for you. What's your favorite lube to recommend people? A lot of the women in my world are postmenopausal. We're not as juicy as you are. What are you, 20 something?
I'm 28, but I would never have sex without lube. It is like, I think that everyone needs it till the day they die at every experience, because even if you have an experience that's like 95% amazing, it's just that little 5% additive that it's just, why not? I always think, why not? So lubes, I love lubes. Beyond the Beez, we love lubes. So there's one called Uber Lube, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. It's in a clear case.
I haven't. So
silicone lube. It's the best one. I think, it's the best. I love Uber Lube. There's a company called Valm. And
does that mean you can do it in your Uber car?
Yeah, bring it in the Uber. Exactly. Uber Lube. They should partner together. Uber Lube Valm is great. It's VALM, and it's just a really great bang for your buck. It's a really big bottle, so I've always loved them. It's really safe ingredients.
It's a really big bottle. It'll last you a whole month.
I mean, can you believe? I literally have it right here. Of course, can you believe how big this is? They're huge.
That's an optimistic person who buys that.
It is the size of my head. So there's that one. And then there's another company called Personal Fave, and they have an oil called Peak, and it's a CBD infused oil. And that one's amazing. It's one of our favorites. And then there's another company called Head South. And for the eco people and you wanting to be less wasteful, which really obviously should be all of us, they have reusable containers. So you'll buy the set once and then you just are buying the product put back into the glass container rather than repurposing the bottle over and over and over.
Interesting. So my sister turned me on to a product long time ago that's available at Walgreens for like $2. It's called Albaline. Have you ever heard of it?
I've never heard of it.
You
Oh,
know, it's been a staple in my bedroom for 34 years. It's great. So I'm
okay.
interested. I'm going to get this other stuff and then I'll report back and I'll let you
Yes.
know which is better. Um, one of the questions I have for you is about learning to get better and learning to get more comfortable. In the relationship, who's usually better at opening up these conversations, the woman or the man?
It's tricky. It's so dependent. I think for a lot of people, the bedroom is filled with your pastor's voice and your parents' voice and the person that bullied you that your genitals look weird, and it's so deep and heavy for so many people, and it just kind of depends on those life experiences of who has that deeper sense of comfort to bring it up. And I think in general for women, there's obviously so much more misogyny in this world. There's so much body shaming. By the time you're 60 years old, you'll get 6 million messages of what I think it's 60 million, 6 million of what your body will look like, which honestly feels like a low amount given how much, screen time we're getting. So it's just it's damaging. There's a lot of work for all of us. I think it also depends on who's maybe like in therapy and kind of working on themselves or have friends they can talk to about it or are able to, look and peek into books and start learning, anything to kind of break the mold that you may be feeling, especially as a woman, will help be able to be the one in the partnership that brings it up.
A lot of people who are listening might consider themselves to be bashful, bashful about, and bashful about getting naked with another person. It's a lot easier to get naked with somebody when you're 28 than it
Mm.
is when you're 58 or 68, let me tell you. So what would you say about that whole business of being bashful? What should we be doing to become less bashful?
Oh, it's so hard. The body stuff, I see it everywhere. And I remember I was in boarding school, and even as like a 17-year-old, there was, and everyone's looking amazing. Everyone's looking so great at 17. And I remember being in a hallway of 8 girls, and 7 had really bad anorexia. So this concept of like discomfort and body image and stuff, I think it just goes so deep and it's so tricky to navigate. But I think it's a place of like really working on yourself and really working on language and how you speak to yourself. And I always give this one idea of like how many times have we all sat at brunch with our friends and been like, oh, I'm so bloated, or like my arm looks so gross in that photo, rather than coming and going, my legs look amazing today, I'm like feeling so cute today, I'm feeling so confident. So it's just like I think whatever you can do to start piecing that together and push narrative in a different way, whether it's getting in the gym and not to lose weight but to feel stronger or whatever it may be, can help you become more comfortable in that skin that's always changing for all of us. So that's what I would say, but it's tricky, a journey for women.
Language is so powerful. Language
Mhm.
that we use with each other, but also the words that are in our head, right? The
Mhm.
things that swim around in our head. And so
Mhm.
when we have one of those thoughts, oh gosh, my belly's bigger than it should be. Oh gosh, I wonder if my butt is jiggling as I walk down the Strand in Santa Monica. Those are the things that we think about.
Mm.
And I like to just acknowledge the thought. Oh, that
Yeah.
was funny. That was a good one. Good job of trashing yourself. And then turn the volume down, have a laugh over it, turn the volume down, and replace it with something that I'm grateful about regarding
Mm.
my body, who I am, all that stuff.
Mm.
So if you're listening, try that when you find yourself, catch yourself, please catch yourself when your mind is going nuts, telling you that you're not good enough. Do you know what I hear from men, Elizabeth? This is so
Mm.
cute. I have heard this dozens and dozens of times over the course of the interviews that I've done with men, over 50,000 of them. So it's really wonderful to get all this statistical data.
Yeah.
Men will tell me that the best looking women are usually never the best in bed.
Interesting. I mean, it's possible. It's certainly, I've never seen statistics on that, but I could see that being the case for sure.
Survey says,
The
and
survey says
it's
that's
always
funny.
amazing to me when I'm working with a woman who doesn't have the perfect body, isn't, as we say, beautiful, the it girl, none of that.
Mhm.
And she loves sex and she's had a wonderful sex life and she's just self-actualized in that way. And it makes me so happy to
Mhm.
see. And you know, what is the number one thing that men find alluring, appealing, and attractive in a woman? Can you guess?
Body language tone?
Similar. It is in that vein because it's confidence, personal confidence.
Confidence.
The woman is working it and she knows she's sexy and she's alive and she's a actualized being and
Mm,
she's demonstrating that she's in her body and she's playful and she's sexual and she's sensual. Whoa, what kind of
right,
guy isn't going to respond to that, right?
right.
As opposed to the woman who might look like Barbie. She might be absolutely beautiful, but maybe her energy is withheld and maybe she's in her head as opposed to being in her body and in her emotions and in her spirit, right?
There's so many, I've heard so many sayings of like some of the models or the most beautiful women in the world are some of the most, insecure because there's such a focus on the visual. So it's hard to like sit into your body. So I could definitely see the disconnect forming. I remember after I've done a few like random photo shoots, and I remember after looking at the photos, those were the times where I was the hardest on myself. That was when I went and got Botox and hated my lines and things like that because you're looking too much at yourself and at your face, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful.
I
So
think I think it's against the law to get Botox before you're even 30.
you would be shocked the amount of people that have it. Crazy.
You know, I a relative who started getting it in her mid 20s, and she looks absolutely fantastic now. And
Mm-hmm.
she's probably in her late 50s, and she looks like she's 38. I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a gentleman that I was working with recently who was telling me about his experience of being with this woman that I introduced him to. He's never in his whole life been with somebody who's as beautiful as she is. And I was impressed that he was courageous enough to go out with her
Oh.
because, I mean, it's a lot of pressure for a
Mm,
guy to be with a woman who's the it girl. Or
mm.
when I was a single girl, I had an opportunity to have a little fun thing with, it was what I call a whoop-de-doo, with a guy who looked like JFK Jr. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I mean, serious. And it was definitely not the best sex of my life. I was
Mm,
too in my head. I was too, I'm comfortable with somebody who's kind of more normal.
It can definitely be overwhelming. I think if it's like, either just wrong person or the wrong personality, if you're getting attracted to the wrong thing and then there's something to talk about, then the experiences are 10 times more awkward if there's no, bond or connection or sense of intimacy that's been developed. So it's the end all be all being with the most beautiful person in the room if there isn't there.
Yeah. And in the times that I've spent in this chair as a matchmaker and a dating coach, I will tell you
Mm,
that the people who are most sought after, which
mm,
is usually related to beauty or wealth,
mm,
they're not the best, they're not the most capable people in the realm of having a beautiful relationship. If there's too much beauty, if there's too much wealth, if there's too much power, it can happen with politicians too. People who
gosh.
have a lot of power, people who are, on boards and everybody thinks they're very important people. Well, in a way, everything comes too easy for them. They don't have the struggles that normal people have.
Gwyneth Paltrow actually spoke about that. I remember seeing an interview of her where she was saying her dad pulled her aside and was like, you're kind of turning into an asshole because all of the boundaries were being taken away and she could get into any club and get any outfit and get any food and get any guy and all of these things. And she was kind of talking about how it made her, yeah, just kind of a shittier person. So I think it's definitely has an effect.
It's pretty rare that I will come upon somebody who has the it girl qualities or the it guy qualities who's
Mm,
actually done the work to be as beautiful on the inside as the outside. And I call that person a unicorn,
mm,
except for When I do the consultation, which is a Zoom consultation, and I pull up about 25 different profiles first so that we're looking at them together and I get to watch their face and see how messed up they are and how off their picker. It's a really, really fun consultation. And if I notice that this person is only going for the usual suspects, the guy who all the girls go for, the girl who all the guys go for, I'm never taking that person on as a matchmaking client because what we'll have is a series of one date wonders.
Oh.
Yeah. The
Mhm.
people who have all the attention, especially because of the swiping apps and the way it is, and I've studied the way the algorithms work, what they do is they serve up the popular people. And
Totally.
why do they serve up the popular people? Because it keeps people paying.
Mm.
It's a thing. It's the dating industry, right? It's all about the money of it, which is creepy. So that's why I bend over backwards to create all kinds of services for the people in my community that are not just for the beautiful, wealthy people. It's really the way the industry is. There's very little between online dating and high-level matchmaking. There's very little in between, and that's my
Yes.
playground. I love to develop things in between. Super
So
fun.
good because so many people are so sick of dating apps. I know a lot of my community members they're over them and they're deleting them. And it is a weird concept. There was that, I think it was Hinge now that has the rose purchasing ability where you have to now buy to send a rose to like all the men that they put that are the most attractive in these like certain things per day, like things like that, where you're like, oh my gosh.
They're scrambling. The
There's
online dating companies are scrambling. Like Bumble always would, the women would be the ones to pick. Well, their profits are tanking. So now like, well, let's let the guys come in and pick too. They'll try
yeah.
anything to get the numbers up again. Now the question is related to monogamy. Talk to me about sex and monogamy.
Oh, it's such an interesting topic. I don't know if you've heard of Esther Perel. I would imagine
Oh
maybe
yeah, she's a
I
here.
love her so much. I think she's so amazing. And she has that book called what was the mating, then the state of affairs. And the state of affairs really dives into that concept of cheating and people that are breaking the monogamy pattern. Monogamy is definitely something that works for people for sure. But I think I would really urge people in monogamous relationships. I think when people kind of shut down this idea that anyone else exists, it's really unhealthy. Like if a guy you're dating says like, oh, that, you're both watching a movie and you're like, oh, she's really beautiful. And he's like, yeah, she is really beautiful. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like you can't think anyone else is beautiful. You want to create an energy where you're reminded of the fact that you're choosing each other. Because I think that concept of choice brings action where you actually are really working towards each other and working to do that make each other feel special. So I always love the concept of like, to me, if anyone wants to talk sex or anything like that, like that's a part of his story. That's a part of how he grew into the person that I'm now dating. I like respect that side of him. I respect that those previous relationships. And I find that that's a really healthy way to navigate it. So that's one side of it. And then when it comes to breaking monogamy, if anyone's ever looking to learn about it, I urge you to read The State of Affairs by Esther Perel. It was one of my favorite reads. It really deep of the cheating, which can be, it doesn't get people off the hook, but it helps you heal if you're someone who's going through that. And I think it often is someone trying to explore something that they left behind, almost like a part of themselves. Because when you're with different partners, you're feeling and exploring different parts of who you are. So a lot of those people who are going and breaking, these monogamous patterns are finding the excitement in how they feel with someone else because it's how they feel about themselves. So I just think, yeah, it's a fascinating read and it really helps understand the concepts of monogamy and how to keep it alive without, open-minded.
It sounds to me like you don't have hard and fast rules about couples needing to be monogamous. You're more fluid in your understanding of what sex can look like in a relationship. But I think the communication needs to be there so that
Oh
it's,
God, yes.
I mean, I know people who have had open relationships with their spouses, and the deal was you can do it, I can do it, but not without transparency.
Right.
So if she was thinking about having a whoop-de-doo or something with a guy or entering into some type of an intimate relationship, whether it be sexual or not, she would tell him and vice versa.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Worked for them for 35 years. And then all of a sudden she didn't want to do that anymore. She didn't want to share him anymore. And it really caused the relationship to split up after all those years.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, I think monogamy is definitely a fascinating, not even just monogamy, but marriage to me is definitely a fascinating concept. I think it can be unbelievable and amazing and work for so many people, but people are forever evolving. So the concept of like, a change in perception of whether you want something opened or you want something closed, or you're feeling the excitement or whatever it may be, you can always feed back into the excitement, but things change. So I think it's something that I struggle with a bit, and still kind of trying to keep myself educated to figure out, making sure you make those decisions for yourself, not because society is telling you that you need to be monogamous, you need to be in those relationships. It just has to be communication and honesty with yourself. I think are the two that are fundamental to me about deciding what kind of relationship you want.
Yep. If we can't talk about it, we shouldn't be doing it.
Right. Right.
Percentage of people in our country would you guess over the age of 20, let's say, are virgins?
That is a great question. Well, virginity itself is something people in the space really kind of debate on, because when you ask yourself something like, is it who has had like a penis inside of them one time versus the woman who's had foreplay and orgasms, because she's only having foreplay, so her orgasm rates are actually going way up, or the percent that she might be having is way up with foreplay, and she's had foreplay with 20 different men, who's more experienced? So it is always a fun question to think about, and what it means, because for some people, virginity is like a crazy concept, where a tampon, if you're in a really religious community, is considered, you're not a virgin anymore. So it just depends, I guess, on who you ask and when you ask. But I think to me, yeah, it's unwind that concept, sex in of itself, going back to the beginning of our conversation, penis in a vagina until a man finishes is kind of, to me, the death of desire. So it's good to think of the box and to get sex meaning other things and virginity meaning other things.
I would say, given that we're talking openly about all of this, that what occurs to me, if a person is a virgin, it's that they've never been intimate south of the border with
Mm,
anyone other
mm,
than themselves, or maybe their pet.
mm.
And seriously, nobody talks about it, but there are people who have had things going on with their dogs, and they tell me.
Interesting. Wow.
Well, it's at a point in our relationship where we're really talking openly about stuff, but
Right.
nobody ever gets to it unless, it's like two truths and a lie. But I mean, I know so many people who have gotten past their 20s, into their 30s, into their 40s, and they've never been sexual with anyone. And a lot of these people have never been kissed before.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's powerful. I've knew that too much, because obviously I'm in the space, once the intimacy is happening or potentially going to happen or whatever it may be. But it is, yeah, I mean, for some people, loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics, is what they're calling it, especially for men. So, or these concepts of feeling really rejected, and then you're unable to put yourself out there. I have a lot of friends that are dying for relationships but aren't putting themselves out there at all. So I would wonder, some of the people who've never experienced these things, if it's fear of it all, or if it's a disinterest in it. Which, if it's disinterest, obviously it's good for them to stay with something that they don't want to be doing. But yeah, it's tough if it's not disinterest.
There, at one of our matchmaking conferences, there's a woman who talked about sexual surrogacy,
Mm,
and it's not prostitution, but it's an opportunity for somebody who has no experience to kind of be guided into it by somebody who knows what they're doing. And
totally.
somebody, and it's not a relationship. It's just, this is what intimacy looks like. And I wish it were more acceptable, because it's badly needed by so many people.
Absolutely. I think even when you think about that concept for people who have disabilities and are not able to, masturbate if they want to, or things like that, it's important to have those people available, because some people, sex work is work, and some people enjoy it. Some people like offering that intimacy and that experience to people who really want it and need it and don't have it. So yeah, I wish there's more of a conversation, in general, where that was starting to flow a bit more, and in the space of it being accepted and something that a lot of people do need. But it seems we're still feeling a bit behind the times, especially in the stage we're entering right now with politics.
Yeah, and that's why we're having this podcast, right? Because this will help a lot of people who've never really had a conversation with anyone about sex. It's
Totally.
it's just it's heartbreaking. Now, there's something that you probably haven't experienced because you're only 28 years old, but when men go through prostate issues, and just any kind of erectile dysfunction, whoa, I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how many men are literally sitting out of dating
Yeah.
altogether because of they're discouraged, embarrassed. My brother, he doesn't listen to my podcast, so I'm allowed to call him out. One day he called me up, he's 65. He said, "My dick don't work no more."
Oh, no.
Oh my God. Well, I hear a lot of this. So it might not be something that you're an expert on because you're so young, but tell me about ED and what you share about it.
You would be surprised. It actually is something I have definitely experienced with men before, seen before, people before. It's at earlier ages, shockingly, and obviously it's much more common in later stages of life. But one of the things that's causing a lot of these like erectile issues in general is anxiety medications or depression medications. If you're on the wrong one, it will just absolutely crush your sex life, whether you're a man or a woman, or you're not get hard or whatever it may be. So in general, like talking to a doctor is so important for something like this. Erectile dysfunction issues can often be something that's, from your brain, and it's causing from your brain the physiological issues that you're seeing. So I think I'm the biggest proponent of men in therapy and working things that are not basically just sex, because a lot of people will see something about their genitals not working, or you're not getting wet, or you're not feeling interested, or you're having erectile dysfunction, and you're thinking it just must be about a sex experience, that it must be about you're not interested in your partner, or you're not interested in sex right now. And back to the fact that your brain is your biggest sex organ, it actually can be connected to the fact that you're getting screamed at by your boss every day, or you're super financially stressed, or whatever it may be. There's such a in together. So for anyone struggling with any of those issues, whether it's ED or anything for a woman, I think doctors are so important, therapists are so important, and an overarching idea and energy of curiosity, see what you're trying to piece the things together and looking outside of just your sex life, because it's a lot bigger than that.
Beautiful. Can you tell us which medicines, which pharmaceuticals are particularly not good for erections?
Honestly, that the problem is it's any of them. So I'm on anxiety medication, and I'm on fluoxetine in a very small dose. And if I'm on like 10 milligrams, but if I was on 20, I have no interest in masturbating. I have no sex drive. So I'm like, my body's clearly very sensitive. And I've had partners where if they're on it at all, they have experienced this for sure. So it just kind of depends on the types you're on. I think for me, I would recommend either just, switching different types and figuring out which ones are best. Cause I think I had switched twice before, finding the dose that works for me and doesn't impact my sex life. But it's definitely a thing. And it drives me crazy that doctors don't tell you. People are just like, get these anxiety meds or the depression meds or whatever it may be. And then they're like, oh, nothing's working anymore. And you're like, how did they not explain that to you? So our system is a little bit broken, where sex needs to be a part of all of those conversations. And we're hoping, maybe the world will start turning where that's part of the medical field. But
It is. These conversations help a lot. So one more fun question for you. You mentioned you have a boyfriend. How did you meet?
We met at a
Sometimes people say that's none of your business. I say, oh, but it is. I need to know.
We had a very funny kind of invisible, if you heard of like the red invisible string theory, where you're kind of tied to each other in a weird way throughout your whole life, where we grew up on the same beach in a small beach town our whole lives, never met. We went to the same college, but he was a couple years older, so we never met. Same sport, same major, same college, everything. And then we randomly met at like a club, a kind of a club in Montauk, which was very random. And yeah, and here we are.
All right. So you met at that club, but
Yeah.
how did it actually happen?
We were in a group of people, and I was going out to my friends, and then we just ended up chatting. And to be honest, I was not like crazy interested at first. I would meet someone at the place called Surf Lodge, and it can have great people, and it can have really terrible influencers, and energies are not for me. So I never thought I'd meet a partner there. So after meeting him, I was like, oh, definitely not a boyfriend. I'll never meet a boyfriend there. And then we ended up going on a date, and here we are.
He asked for your phone number?
Yes. Yeah. We're a little too
Right. Instagram. And so
Instagram.
he's checking you out on Instagram, and then you start texting on Instagram. And at some point, he says, Elizabeth, how about we go out and have a drink together or coffee or whatever? Is that what happened?
Yep, yep, exactly.
All right. Very good.
Yeah, I think I definitely the confidence. He was really great about, when he was single, being very confident and going up to women that he was interested in and just his shot. And he was like, what's the case? If he hadn't done that to me because I was not really interested in chatting with him, we would have never met. So I think for him, I think it was great. He was always going on dates before we were dating. And I think that's what you should be doing when you're if you want that life. And it just takes that confidence to say, you know what, someone's going to reject me, but someone's not. So ignore the rejection and get excited about the people that are going to be interested.
For a lot of these guys, and it's not just young guys, it can be guys who are divorced in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, and they have to try to get their game on. And some of them have never been dating because they married their high school sweetheart or somebody from college. They have no experience. So they have to learn how to muster up that courage. Do you think it was something that he decided one day that he needed to get good at, and so he started practicing it?
Definitely. He had been in a long-term relationship. So he'd been kind of out of that game for almost years, actually, which is crazy. He's 34. So I think he would be similar to a lot of men that had experienced that. And I think he was just like, I don't want to wallow in sadness. I don't want to, be on dating apps. He was very against dating apps. So he was like, the only option is to be confident and put myself out there and face the possibility of rejection. And that's what he did. And I think it definitely seemed to have gone very well for him in his single stage, but it's a good lesson of just putting yourself out there.
What do you like the most about him?
I think his confidence. Yeah, I think he's a very confident, driven, hardworking person. When he's interested in something, he's gonna like go after it and get it. And yeah, I think yeah, not really caring about what people think, which I was the opposite for so long. It's a hard.
Confidence on both sides is so beautiful.
It's
Have
great.
you talked about love languages? Do you speak each other's love
Yes,
languages?
definitely. Oh, sorry. We talk about love languages all the time. We do have the same one. Yeah, it's touch and what's the
Like
phrase?
words of affirmation.
Affirmations. Thank you.
Yeah. And so he's not the guy who brings you your cup of coffee every morning dutifully
No.
because it's an act of service. You get your own coffee.
I'm very much like a go-getter. Like I can do it myself. Like don't tell me what to do. Don't do things for me. So yeah, definitely. I
And
get my
what about giving and the whole money thing? How do you guys handle money thing? Money is so
complex. I think we have an open conversation about it a lot because I think for me as someone in a startup space and he's someone in finance, we're in two different spheres right now of what we're able to do for each other. But I always joke that we do the percentage of what we have for each other. So if he's buying dinner and I'm buying coffee, we're actually doing the same thing if you look at it from the concept of what you have to offer to your partner at that point. But yeah, I think I do like when it is really generous. I think paying on dates is something I really like when a man does that. So he kind of follows in those, typical
yeah.
roles. But I think, yeah, just open conversation, always trying to give to him in different ways, whether it be, just like little acts. It don't always have to be surrounded by money if that's something that you can't do.
Well, I love that you're having a grown-up relationship at the age of 28. Hats off.
Thank
Um, Now your company is called Beyond the Beez. Assuming that has to do with the birds and the bees.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. When I started my company, it was just because I was so passionate about sexual education. So I started it as just a blog to kind of keep myself learning when I graduated from college and put it all up in one place. And so I was like, oh, I lived at the beach with my parents and I was like, I'm gonna call it Beyond the Beez. And then we just all kind of had like a giggle and that was the end of that. And then yeah, I never thought I would have when COVID hit, I was like, this is the perfect time to do it full time and really give my all to it. And I just kept the name and it kind of ended up working.
It's beautiful. So if people want to work with you, what kind of things do you offer? What can you do?
We have our e-commerce section. So I spent so many years trying to really understand the space and be able to talk to speak language of what they're looking for. So we have our e-commerce, we have our first product that we launched this year, which is called The Pleasure Is Mine. And it's a card game to help women find that pleasure that we've been talking about so much in this Zoom or in this podcast. And it's divided by 3 sections. So there's 30 learn cards, 30 think, and 30 act. So you're learning about the woman's body, you're reflecting on your knowledge message, maybe where you'd be missing. And then there's 30 act cards that really prioritize, there's a bit of intercourse, but it really prioritizes foreplay to kind of create that sense of creativity. And then lastly, we have 6 different workshops that we offer people, whether it be corporate organizations or nonprofits or one-on-ones. And that kind of ranges from pleasure to, finding sexual desire in long-term relationships. I just built one out on abortion care and really understanding the pro-choice movement, given the political situation that we're in. I just want people to be super educated about where we might be going and where we've come from. And then 3 others for the younger generation, we're calling it birds and bees, and then sex ed for teens. So that kind of sphere. Oh, and then one on finding your partner. So the science behind partnership.
Good. So Beyond the Beez with a Z.com.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing all this, Elizabeth. This is probably one of my favorite podcasts. No surprise that it's about sex. And that was what I was obsessed with studying in college. And so were you.
Mm-hmm.
If I invite you back, will you come back? I got more questions for you.
Absolutely. It's my favorite topic. So if anyone has any questions after this, DM me. I'm shocked.
And on Instagram, you're Beyond the Beez.
Yes.
On Instagram. Okay, very good. I'm going to follow you if I haven't already. Thank you for your time today. And folks, you guys go out there and do some of this fun stuff, and you transform me to we for yourself. Thanks for listening.